I'm a bad motherfucker.
So the Vigilant Fox tweeted this out. World-renowned cardiologist Dr. Peter McCullough responded by declaring that we are witnessing an active cover-up of a colossal consumer product safety debacle. So they did a Freedom of Information request about myocarditis and the CDC, and this was at this is in Arizona's novel coronavirus Southwestern Intergovernmental Committee, and this is what happened. Watch this.
I find information like this, inserts for the vaccine. Paper's there, and there's nothing printed on it. I find that very interesting.
So do you remember that? We've showed you that before. Like when they send out a vaccine, they usually send out all this medical jargon information about it, but it was all blank. We've showed you that before.
Crazy.
Okay, now watch this.
Disheartening, disgusting, and lots of other words. But then it gets better. It just keeps, wait, there's more. It just keeps happening. The CDC redacts every single word of a 148-page study on a myocarditis after COVID vaccination. So I asked research to print the study for me. 148 pages. The entire thing is redacted. What good does a study do if there's nothing there? Then I want to know, wait, what might have been there that they needed to redact it? That's even scarier.
We're witnessing an active cover-up of a colossal consumer product safety debacle that is basically affecting the entire world. So in the United States, our CDC, National Institutes of Health, and the FDA are actively involved in a cover-up. And the same is occurring in the UK with the MHRA, Europe with European medicine agencies, and Australia with the Therapeutic Goods Administration. Something is going on that's very big. Each one of these companies that puts out a product has an obligation to produce 90 days of safety monitoring after their product comes out. It's a regulatory dossier. If somebody has a problem with the new product and they call the company like Pfizer, Pfizer has to write down what happened, and they have to collate that in a report and produce it and make it publicly available. When it came to 90 days with Pfizer, the first vaccine that came out, remember Pfizer was approved December 10th, 2020, Pfizer didn't produce a report. And then people started asking, well, what's happening with your vaccine? And Pfizer would not disclose what happened. And then it went to court. And the lawyer for the FDA stepped in and said they don't want to release Pfizer's dossier for 55 years.
I remember reporting that at 75 years. But we'll go with what he said. You remember? So this is all real.
55 years. And the plaintiff pushed. And finally, slowly, the Pfizer dossier came out. Pfizer recorded 1,223 deaths with their product within 90 days of release. People were calling Pfizer in desperation, watching their family members die after taking the vaccine. Pfizer recorded over 1,200 new adverse events, new problems that Dr. Bowden has talked to you about that we are grappling with the entire time. But the point is, our FDA worked to cover this up. The FDA should be regulating this company. FDA should have been having at least monthly meetings and fully disclosing what was going on with these novel vaccines, which are a genetic transfer technology platform. It's the first time human beings had ever been injected with foreign genetic material in world history. Now they were getting it full on. 2/3 of the world's population took these.
So, as we all know, the FDA and the CDC will contradict him and say that the vaccine is safe and effective. And so that's what we have to tell you. It is super safe and effective, and it won't completely stop the transmission of the virus, but it will certainly keep you from getting seriously ill, hospitalized, or death. That's YouTube guidelines. That's FDA, CDC guidelines. They're still recommending it. So it can't be anything wrong with it. But why would they redact 148 pages? Why would they want to cover up their noble work of saving humanity? They should be bragging about it, don't you think? It's not like the consequences could put them in an ironic position of receiving one last injection. So there's a fact check on this. Do you want to hear what the fact check is? This is from Snopes. Now, let's remember the guy who was the editor of Snopes had to resign because he got caught being a serial plagiarist. Just so you know. So, fact check. CDC supposedly released redacted study on myocarditis after COVID-19 vaccination. Here's what we know. Well, they say that's false. In March 2024, the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention released an entirely redacted 148-page study on myocarditis outcomes after a COVID-19 vaccination. That's the claim. They say it's false. Why do they say it's false? Well, here, let's watch. The anti-vaccine advocates, they call them, this is in Snopes, they call them anti-vaccine advocates. So they're already using a pejorative. Not people who are concerned citizens, concerned doctors. In March 2024, anti-vaccine advocates claimed that the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention had released a wholly redacted 148-page study on myocarditis occurring after a COVID-19 mRNA vaccination. The document was the subject of a discussion during a hearing at the novel coronavirus Southwestern that we just showed you, right? 148 pages, said Arizona State Senator Janine Shamp as she held up blank pages during the hearing. The entire thing is redacted. What good does the study do if there's nothing there? Well, watch this. Peter McCullough, a cardiologist who contributed to the spread of misinformation. They don't tell you what misinformation he spread. They just keep saying that. What misinformation did Dr. Peter McCullough spread? They don't tell you. They say the same thing about anybody. They say the same thing about Joe Rogan. They say the same thing about Dr. Robert Malone, the guy who invented the mRNA vaccine technology. They said about anybody who goes against what Big Pharma wants you to say, they say they spread misinformation, but they never tell you what the misinformation was. The people who spread misinformation was the corporate media, the FDA, the corporate media, and the government, and Big Pharma. They lied to you about everything. The origin of the virus. They called you a white supremacist if you said it came from a lab. They said that was a crazy conspiracy theory. Now we know that they were covering it up because the emails got released. That they knew where it came from, and they lied. They lied to you about masks. Fauci's admitted to lying to you about masks. They lied to you about, they didn't want to release the data on the trial vaccine for 75 years. He says 55. They lied to you about herd immunity. They lied to you about natural immunity. They lied to you about ivermectin. They told you it was horse-based instead of a Nobel Prize-winning human medicine that's on the WHO list of essential medicines. There wasn't a thing they didn't lie about. They lied to you about transmission. They told you that if you took the vaccine, it would stop the virus dead and that you couldn't catch it or pass it along. That was a lie. That wasn't true. There wasn't a thing. So the people who spread misinformation weren't people like Dr. McCullough. It was people like Dr. Fauci. It was people like Rachel Maddow, President Biden, and every news reporter in the world. Peter Hotez, those types of people. Those are the people who were lying. So they call Peter McCullough a cardiologist who contributes to the spread of misinformation. They don't tell you what it is. Dr. McCullough accused the CDC, the FDA, as well as the UK, European, and Australian medicine regulation agencies of being complicit in this alleged cover-up. As we will demonstrate below, the redacted document was not in any sense a study. So this is what they're doing. They're playing semantics. Let's watch this. The CDC did release 148 redacted pages following a Freedom of Information. Why would they do that? What are they hot? So they're going to say, well, that wasn't the study. Why would they redact 148 pages? Why wouldn't they be bragging about the good work they did to save the world? So these pages, however, were not a study. Zachary Stieber of the
Well, I don't mean to cut you off there, but if you go to that last slide, what's interesting to that is they said it's a survey, not a study. So is that what they're doing? They're parsing the difference between a survey and a study? Because if you go there, the myocarditis outcomes after mRNA surveys. But these pages were not a study. Is that what they're doing?
These pages,
are they parsing the difference between a survey and a study?
Well, it gets worse. So seeing some confusion about this document, this is the guy who did the FOIA. He said, it's a CDC document sent to us in response to a Freedom of Information Act request and is fully redacted. A second document is mostly redacted. The request asks for information about the CDC's moving project. The team has posted several studies, including this one. The CDC plans to submit another paper on updating findings from the project for peer review, a spokesperson told us in January. Okay, so back to the fact check. The post to which he replied included the 148 blank pages. Clicking on the linked document and zooming in, a small inscription appears in the upper left corner. This is it here. And what does that mean? The inscription B5, seen above, is repeated on every page of the document. This refers to the information that is exempted from the Freedom of Information Act request. So all those 148 pages that were blank and redacted had this in the corner of them, B5. According to the U.S. Justice Department, Exemption 5 of the Freedom of Information Act protects interagency or intra-agency memorandums or letters which would not be available by law to a party other than an agency in litigation with the agency. So what they're saying is we didn't redact the study. We redacted all the communications that we had about it. That's what they're redacting. All the interagency or intra-agency memorandums or letters, that's what they redacted. Why would you want to cover that up? And the only time you have to be compelled to release that is if someone was actually in litigation against the agency, the CDC. Then you'd have to provide that. This detail confirms that the 148 redacted pages did not comprise a study, but were instead communications within the CDC or between the CDC and other. That's also bad. That is also not good. We contacted the CDC asking for more details on the reason for the redaction, and we'll update this story if we receive an answer. Stieber, that's the guy who did the FOIA, the request, in his post added that the CDC team in charge of studying myocarditis outcomes following COVID-19 vaccinations has already shared several studies on the topic. He links to one of them published in 2022 in The Lancet, which concludes, after at least 90 days since onset of myocarditis after mRNA COVID-19 vaccination, most individuals in our cohort were considered recovered. By health, so the people who got myocarditis 90 days after their vaccination, they said they were recovered. They're not saying that the vaccine didn't give them myocarditis. They're saying that after 90 days, they recovered. That's what they're saying. And the quality of life measures were comparable to those in pre-pandemic and early pandemic populations of a similar age. That's what they're saying. That's what they're saying. The CDC and other research institutions have indeed released several studies on the link between the COVID-19 vaccine and both myocarditis, which is an inflammation of the heart muscle, and pericarditis, which is an inflammation of the thin tissue that lines the heart. So they're not denying it. The CDC website links to 10 studies on myocarditis after the vaccine care, and Stieber indicated in his post that the moving team told him it plans to publish another study with updated findings. Well, you just wanted to redact all the shit you guys said about it. Right? Yes. Yes. Several studies found that while myocarditis and pericarditis can follow mRNA vaccination, the data show vaccination protects against complications. Really? For example, a study from Germany showed that the risk of dying from myocarditis from COVID-19 infection is much higher than the risk of dying from myocarditis. So now you know why nobody trusts Snopes anymore. And who is funding Snopes? I know that most of those fact check organizations are getting money from Bill Gates or Bill Gates cutouts or the Annenberg Foundation. all that shit. That's where they're not independent. They're getting billionaire money to push a political agenda. So now, are you clear on what they're saying now, Keaton? Because I am. They're saying that no, we've released what they redacted was all the shit that people had said at the CDC about these studies.
Right.
That's what they're redacting, not the study, because the study revealed that it. But go ahead.
Right, that it could. Yeah, I don't know all the YouTube rules about this, so I will just say I think you know better than me. But the communications seem to be what they would want to keep hidden, because I don't know. I find it impossible to believe that they actually thought that, for example, the vaccine stopped transmission. I mean, when Rachel Maddow went out and said that the virus stops at a vaccinated person, could they have actually known that with any degree of confidence? No, because it wasn't true. So were they confident in that assessment, or were they just saying that because they needed people to take it?
Well, we know,
right? It seems like the communication.
We know that the Pfizer
is key.
Yeah, the key. That's the key part that they're redacting.
Yeah.
And we also know that what you're talking about, when they came out and said that the vaccine stops the transmission dead, we know because of a European Parliament hearing, they asked a Pfizer executive, "Did you study to see if it stopped transmission?" And the Pfizer executive said, "No, we didn't."
So they clearly said that without knowing it, because they needed people to
That's
take
right.
it. And so whatever communications happened in advance of that coming out would probably be something that they'd want to keep under wraps, right? Because that is the sort of paper trail, right? That would implicate people if people said, "Hey, we haven't studied this, but tell people it stops transmission." Like if there's anything in writing to that effect, I imagine in a sane world there would be consequences for that.
You would think. This is not a sane world.
Well, this is like when Fauci was grilled by Rand Paul, and Rand Paul said, "Did you
fund
you funded gain of function?" And Fauci basically just changed the meaning of gain of function. Like all of the communications between these high-ranking people, it makes sense they want to keep those secret, because what it all comes back to ultimately is where did the virus actually come from, right? I mean, that's the biggest scandal of all, in my opinion.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. If they funded the research that created the virus that they claim killed millions of people, aren't they responsible for that?
Well, that's what Rand Paul told Fauci.
Yes.
He says, "When are you going to accept responsibility for this pandemic?" And Fauci said, "I'm not responsible
I'm not.
for this pandemic."
We weren't funding gain of function. Of course, then the NIH came out and said, "No, actually, they were funding it." Did you? I remember that. The NIH came out and said, "No, actually, we were. They did fund it. They funded it through Eco Health Alliance, which is a CIA cutout, because Barack Obama had put a pause on gain of function research because it's so dangerous." Right. So Fauci lied twice to Congress by my count, at least. And of course, he'll never be prosecuted for that, because you don't get in trouble if you lie at the behest of the establishment, which is what he's doing. He was the head of the bioweapons program for the Pentagon, Fauci. So he was lying at the behest of the Pentagon and Big Pharma at the same time. And so,
and it should not be legal to keep these documents secret. Like that to me is insane. Is insane. I understand why certain information in the government has to be kept under wraps. But when you're talking about a matter of public health, and you're talking about a medication that's not only widely available, but that is compelled, right? I mean, they compelled people to take it. People lost jobs because they didn't take it. That information should be available to the public, I think. I don't think you should be allowed to hide that.
100%. Okay, so just to wrap up, the vaccine is super safe and effective. And it won't stop the spread, but it slows it, and it'll keep you from getting seriously ill or hospitalized or dead. So it's great. And we are not contradicting the FDA or the CDC or the WHO. You should listen to them, and they say it's great, and everybody should go out and get their booster. I think you're on shot number 9 or 10 now.
Lucky.
Yeah, no, we're not saying don't take it. I would just like to be able to read the communication.
Yeah. Okay, I got one more story. Over to Steph.
All right.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you hate shitty coffee? I, for one, really hate shitty coffee, which is why I'm excited to introduce to you a company that's revolting against shitty coffee, and it's called the 1775 Coffee Company. Now, I haven't had it yet because I only drink decaf. Steph has had it. Steph, how do you like it?
I really like it. You know what? I have a French press, and so I've been using my French press and totally enjoying it. It's delicious. It's smooth. So
1775, the world awakened to a new era. And now it's 1775 Coffee Company is bringing you a coffee that embodies that revolutionary spirit. Crafted with passion and precision, our beans are ethically and exclusively sourced from the finest coffee beans farms of Bolivia. Didn't know that. 1775 Coffee Company's farm-to-cup journey ensures the highest quality of authenticity and sustainability from start to finish. With each sip, your palate will recognize and appreciate the dedication and passion that goes into crafting this single-sourced brew. 1775 Coffee Company takes pride in offering customers a truly exceptional coffee experience with their premium coffee collection. But their dedication to this revolution extends beyond the realm of taste. Safeguarding freedom of speech is critical right now, which is why 1775 Coffee Company has joined forces with Rumble in defense of one of our most fundamental rights, freedom of speech. Coffee that's sure to awaken all your senses, including the sense of freedom. So choose 1775 Coffee by going to 1775coffee.com/litter. That's LITTER, and use the code LITTER for 10% off the checkout on your first order. 1775 Coffee, brewed to perfection, crafted with revolution.
Hey, thanks for checking out our YouTube channel. Subscribe by clicking on that button down there for more AM Joy.